Hi, everybody. It's Joe Chaffee. Worked a double shift with a short turnaround, and now I got to go back. So, thought I'd squeeze a video here in the middle. Just want to show you. We had today 3 to 6 inches of snow across much of the northern half of New Jersey, Long Island, Connecticut, the Hudson Valley, and actually quite the ice event that occurred across parts of southern Pennsylvania and Maryland. There were numerous traffic accidents. It was a really bad one in Baltimore with a 18-wheeler jackknifed, I believe, and there were actually 4 fatalities from it, which is awful. This is the cold air just kind of wedged down, and you can see on this map here, the surface map, how the cold air is just very, very stubborn to get out of the way. You've got temperatures still in the 30s and even some 20s in this area right now. You see some warmer airs trying to sweep in from the ocean where you've got low 40s here. But this is what happens to warm fronts. The mountains and the effect of the cold air trying to dam down the mountains causes the warm front to get hairpinned like this. And you can see it there. And this is what just started that process this morning. We had that little wave that developed on this front that moved out to the northeast, and that wave pinned down cold air for an extra couple of hours, and then we were able to squeeze out an extra couple of inches of snow. Some places getting 4 inches that should have gotten only a coating to an inch. So this is how it works. And you see where the warm air is. It's in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, just to the south of this warm front, but it's having a real tough time. I think eventually it will win out, but it may take all night for this to move northward as this next wave goes by, where we get into some rain. So that's pretty much it for the short range. I want to go look at what the long range pattern holds, because there's a lot of confusion, and I guess maybe I should try to be a little less sensitive about the fact that some people make really these unequivocal statements about the long range as if they see something out 20 days, 30 days in advance, and it's written in stone. I just don't know how you can do that. I mean, in lieu of the fact that we just had this event that really kind of came out of nowhere to some degree, I'd like to just tell the young meteorology students that might be watching this, or those with the ideas of getting into meteorology, you got to try to keep an open mind on things. I'm not a long range guy. I never really have been. I'm a short range kind of guy. I like things like what happened yesterday. I like to really get into the synoptic, nitty gritty, and try to figure out, down to the last point what's going to happen. So I try to look at this in a broad context. One of my takeaways from this is that I really think that there's a kind of a state of flux going on here. You can see just from a couple of days ago, here's that big vortex, and it pulls out. Now we have this trough that's coming through here, and there's a semblance here of some colder air. But the problem is that the actual vortex itself that's replacing the one that left it's not as deep, and it's certainly not as far south. So you get cold air that kind of gets strung out in a northeast-southwest fashion. You get this broad southwest flow that you're dealing with. So, that goes away. And as we go into the week, there's a weather system that's going to come through, starts to come into the picture. And this is the new GFS. So this is for Wednesday. I'm going to have to jump to the old one, but that's the next weather system. The flow in Canada is kind of westerly. It's not particularly cold. You have this low pressure up near Greenland, which is usually not good for cold air, especially with no block, and you've got this here. So it's not the best of flows by any stretch of the imagination. But let me go back to the prior run from earlier today, because I have the full run there, and you can see it here what happens. Now that trough comes eastward, and by later Thursday night, you have this system, some kind of low that's going to probably, at least from the GFS's standpoint, go by to our north. There is some debate there. We've got this next system that follows it, that's kicking it along. So it's just kind of this nondescript pattern that we're entering. So we'll have to see how long it lasts. And then once that lifts out, the GFS wants to build a big ridge off the East Coast. And you can see as we go into, this is right through Christmas. and it would imply a mild Christmas. And by the way, not all models agree with this idea, so let me just point that out. But it basically, has this trough out in the west that, eventually over time, as we get later in the last 4 days, 14 through 16, it's kind of a carryover from yesterday and last night. You do have a bit of a colder look getting established again, with a low south of the Gulf of Alaska. There's a ridge that builds up over Alaska, so you do have a bit of a colder look going in now to the first week of January. And we kind of said on and off over the last few days that was sort of where I was going in terms of how this pattern was evolving. Now I want to show you the European, because the European is a little bit different in a couple of ways. One is with this, here's that first system, and it's a little more sheared out. It's a little less developed. So this might possibly, and the Canadian sort of hints at this too, it might mean for a low that winds up being a little further south. This is what the models were doing a couple of days ago. So we'll have to see if it gets back to that idea. And then you have this next deeper trough as we move through Christmas. It kind of wants to bring the ridge up the East Coast, but you have this deep trough that it brings through on the day after Christmas. And this is different from the GFS, which looks like this. And we'll switch it out, and you can see, I have to go back to the other run, I'm sorry. You can switch it out. So there's the GFS with this ridge in the east, this trough in the west, whereas the European has a trough off the west coast, a ridge in the middle, and a trough along the east coast. And then we have the Canadian, which has, kind of a trough. It has a trough in the west. It's got a southwest flow, but it's got some kind of system in the southeast with a flatter ridge off the east coast. I mean, so go figure. Honestly, I don't know where this is going to go over the next 10 days. I think my best approach as a forecaster, and I think a forecaster's best approach with all this, is to, kind of let it happen and see where it goes without worrying about, where it's going to be 10 days from now today. Okay, so let me just show you here real quick. We'll get you the full U.S. view, and because there are other parts of the country that are going to get some snow out of this as we move forward. So, here's our system for tomorrow, and it comes on through. This is the Canadian's view, by the way. And then for the latter part of this week, the Canadian actually wants to take a low into the Ohio Valley and redevelop it just offshore. And you see the next system that comes into the western states with some snow in Colorado and Wyoming in the Central Rockies for next weekend, which the European kind of stretches it out here instead of lifting it up, because it does. I'm sorry, the Canadian wants to build a high across the eastern Canada, so it tries to take a low into the Ohio Valley and just redevelops it just offshore and takes it out. So it's a little bit of a colder look. And the GFS, of course, is in a whole different place, and we'll go back to that. And I will switch to the 12Z run, which is the morning run. And the GFS, we'll run it back. Okay, so this is for the end of next week, which is a simple cold front. Then this is for the day after Christmas, which kind of has one wave going by and then another deeper low going into the eastern part of the Great Lakes. We know what's happened to deep lows lately. They just have not occurred. Okay. And then as we go into New Year's, you've got some sort of a cold shot that it brings down and pulls out. And then it's got another colder high that it starts to nose in from the northwest because of that, colder look that it's developing very late in the period. So, you know what? We're in a state of flux. Let's leave it at that. And let's see what the models hold for tomorrow. So have a great have a great Saturday night. They're starting to feel the same to me. SS Storm Chasers, meteorologist joechaffee.com, weatherlongisland.com, nycweathernow.com, and download my weather app if you would, and subscribe to my forecasts for New York, New Jersey, Long Island, Hudson Valley, Connecticut, and Eastern Pennsylvania. Just 99 cents a month, and that's it. And subscribe to my YouTube videos. The YouTube subscription is free, and you get notified when I put new videos up. And won't cost you a dime. Have a great rest of your weekend. I'm going to the Giant game tomorrow, So I ought to have fun. I've never been to a football game before, an NFL football game before, so it's going to be my first time. Have a great Sunday.